Now to Decision 2024. All eyes on New York this morning as it's due day for former President Donald Trump, not only in his $500 million bond due, but a critical hearing in the criminal hush money payments case. This as Congress avoids a last-minute government shutdown, but the fate of aid to Ukraine and Speaker Johnson hangs in the balance this morning. Here to discuss this and more is Caroline Heldman, professor of critical theory and social justice at Occidental College. Good morning, Caroline.
Good morning, Giselle. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. All right, it's deadline day for the former president, as you well know. He railed against a weaponized DOJ on Truth Social, says he does have the money, but doesn't want to use it to pay the bond. There it is. That's his posting. If he cannot pay, Attorney General Letitia James now can start seizing property. What are you looking for specifically today?
Well, you pointed out she will be seizing property and assets. I don't think we'll see any action today or any aggressive action today because Trump has appealed this. He's trying to get a smaller bond. And, you know, this is a man who's in real estate, so he doesn't have a lot of liquid assets, and bond companies typically are not going to take property as collateral. So he is in a tight position here. But I would anticipate that she will go after not only property, but also bank accounts. It's important to note she did publicly file notice of the claim in Westchester, which means that she will likely go after his golf course and his residence there, at least initially.
So the process is already underway. We'll see what happens later today. So the former president is bleeding money in legal bills. His fundraising is half of what Biden's is. His Truth Social is going public, but he can't touch that stock for months. And he's using all of this to fundraise, saying, keep your hands off Trump Tower. But is his fundraising is lagging, Caroline. So what does that tell you?
Well, it tells me that this is a man who's in a very tight position. I don't think he would ever claim bankruptcy because it goes against his billionaire, successful businessman brand that is so important to his followers. I do think that if I'm in Trump's head, I'm going to spin any seizure of property as part of my persecution complex, right, that the government is coming after me. And I anticipate that that's what we will see quite a bit of in the coming months as Letitia James does go after his assets.
And meanwhile, while all this is going on, the former president will be in court today for that hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels case. There are many pundits who say that this is the least significant of the trials, but this case did send his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, to prison for lying about these payments. Are pundits underestimating this case?
Well, it's possible. He is facing between 1 and 4 years in prison with 34 felony counts, but it is unlikely. It's just not something that happens very often in these cases in New York. So if you look at the history of folks who have similar cases, they typically do not go to jail. And I would imagine, or I would hope, that Trump would be treated in the same way as any other defendant in this state. But as you point out, you know, Giselle, he could be facing jail time, and the timing of it, if this trial were to wrap up in the next couple of months, the timing of incarceration would be right around the time of election.
All right. Another Republican says enough of all this. Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski says she is done with Donald Trump and won't rule out leaving the GOP. And take a look, Caroline, at this list of all the former Trump officials who refuse to endorse him. I mean, take a look at those major cabinet players, allies. What does this tell you? And does it have any traction or impact his base at all?
I think it has no traction with his base. Donald Trump has made a name for himself with about 50% of the party strongly supporting him and his righteous crusade, if you will, and it has riven the Republican Party in two. So the list of names you see there are folks who are more on the kind of Reagan-esque side of the Republican Party, the more traditional Republicans. I mean, if Mike Pence, his vice president, who is not going to be running with him again, right, has come out and said he won't endorse him, if that doesn't make a difference, you know, with his base, then what will?
Right. There we're seeing Bill Barr as well. All right. President Biden leading in 8 major national polls this morning, but losing in key battleground states. He has stepped up his campaigning in Florida, of all places. The state Democrats have not won the presidential level since 2012. Why Florida? Is Florida in play?
I don't think Florida's actually in play, but Biden really needs to be worried about the electoral college map, right? So this isn't a national contest. It's whoever gets to 270 electoral college votes. It's a kind of arcane system. I think he's really focused on, you know, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia. and Michigan. Those are the key swing states. I think Florida's maybe a second tier. A Democrat hasn't won there since 2012. It swings Republican. But at this point, Biden cannot afford to not be putting resources in every potential state, even if it's a long shot.
Right. All right. Robert Kennedy Jr. no longer being ignored, with the Biden team anyway, going hard after him. What do you make of it? Has he become a real threat?
He is absolutely a threat. He initially was pulling from both Trump and Biden, but now in key swing states, according to polls, he's mostly pulling from Biden. What I think will happen with Kennedy, though, and sorry, folks who support him, I think that his support will actually fade quite a bit when folks find out some of his beliefs, right? He believes that transgender kids are caused by water. He believes that Wi-Fi causes cancer. He believes in a very inaccurate claim that vaccines cause autism. He also flip-flopped on a national abortion ban. So all of this to say, his views are actually very outside of mainstream Americans' views. And the more we get to know about him as the contest moves forward, I think we'll see his support numbers go down. But I still think they're going to mostly pull from Biden.
Okay, let's turn now to the chaos that is Congress. Not in Congress, that is Congress. They do avoid a government shutdown in the 11th hour in this rare bipartisan deal. Before the ink is even dry, Marjorie Taylor Greene files a motion to oust Speaker Johnson over it all. Deja vu in a way. What happens next?
Well, she's been coy about when she might call the vote. She says that she has the support to do that. I'm not sure if that's the case, but let's say that she does. That means we go through another kind of nightmare scenario for the Republican Party. This is absolutely terrible for the Republican Party. During an election year, it will make them look like a do-nothing Congress, right? A do-nothing party. And so many of Marjorie Taylor Greene's fellow Republicans do not want her to move forward with this. If she does move forward with this, then again, we might face 3 to 4 weeks of Congress not getting anything done while they decide who the next leader will be.
Right, all this while another congressman, Mike Gallagher, he is the latest to leave the GOP, further shrinking their majority to one now. Johnson will need Democrats, it seems, to survive this attempt if their attempt to oust him goes through. Do they save him, or could Hakeem Jeffries actually become Speaker?
Well, I don't think Jeffries can become Speaker because they still have that one vote majority. But it's interesting. Will the Democrats save Johnson? They're in a different place than they were with Kevin McCarthy. There isn't the bad blood on an interpersonal level with many Democrats. But also, he just negotiated a government, keeping the government open with Democrats. So I can imagine that they might advance a Ukraine package in order to save him. I think that would be a very smart thing for the Democrats to do. It would be highly unusual for them to save a speaker of the opposite party, but who knows? American politics, topsy-turvy.
Right, especially for that all-important aid to Ukraine. Speaking of which, so Vladimir Putin blaming Ukraine for the horrific terrorist attack, despite ISIS taking responsibility. Does that narrative rhetoric work? Does it impact the U.S. sending aid to Ukraine?
I think anyone who is in a media ecosystem or echo chamber that is getting anti-Ukraine rhetoric, I think this is a very powerful argument. And I think it's very important to note that the United States did warn Putin, gave Putin information that an attack was imminent. And we warned our own people who were there, and yet he poo-pooed it. And now you don't see him noting that at all, but rather inaccurately blaming Ukraine because it serves his political purposes.
Right. And before I let you go, the Biden administration's top brass working on a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas seems to be gaining some traction this morning. But Speaker Johnson is going around the president and apparently asking Netanyahu to address Congress, reminiscent of 2015, right? So how does that impact these negotiations, if at all?
Well, it empowers Netanyahu in these negotiations in a way that might stand in the way of compromise. Hopefully that's not the case. Obviously, Johnson is responding to Schumer really being highly critical of Netanyahu and saying that we should hold elections after the war has ceased. Very highly unusual to have Schumer do that, and then, as you note, to have Johnson invite him. But it does appear now that both Schumer and Johnson will be inviting Netanyahu for a joint address, which I think would be great because then it wouldn't be a partisan maneuver.
Having fun yet, Caroline?
8 months. 8 more months until this thing wraps up. Woo.
Gear up. All right. Thank you so very much, Caroline Heldman, professor of critical theory and social justice at Occidental College. As always, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you, Giselle.